Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the pork queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama. I'm Justin Brady, and of course it is the Iowa Podcast, which means we have to cover the Iowa Caucuses. And to do that, I really can't think of anyone better than Chair of the Iowa GOP, Jeff Kaufmann. Thanks for coming in the studio, Jeff.
Pleasure to be here.
It's kind of a busy month for you, isn't it?
I feel like I'm on the first manned space trip to Mars, and I'm sitting on the cone section of the rocket. It's exciting but daunting.
So January 15th, caucuses are right around the corner. I think the number one thing that has been in the news from the Democrats and the Republicans alike is election integrity. And of course, this isn't an election. This is a caucus. It's very, very different. We're not going to get into the whole difference. People can Google that kind of stuff. But in 2020, you remember this, Dems kind of struggled. Technologically speaking, it was a bit of embarrassing. Their chair ended up resigning. Rita Hart, of course, took over. But 2012, the Iowa GOP announced Mitt Romney. And of course, it was actually Rick Santorum. So it's a big responsibility you have. Of course, Iowa Caucuses is the holdout. They're still in Iowa. What's the plan? How do we make sure that there are no complainers later, that people aren't questioning the integrity of Iowa caucuses?
Sure. And I mean, it's even more pressure on the Republicans this year since the Democrats lost their first in the nation.
Yep, it's true.
And so, I mean, I feel the spotlight is even that much brighter. But
no kidding.
This is one of the most transparent processes we have. In 2012, and I'm not downplaying the mistake that was made, but it was basically the chair called the election too soon. So it wasn't a problem with the actual process. The process in and of itself is, it's something really to be excited about. And any of your listeners that's interested in voter integrity will love the Iowa caucuses. We count the votes in our precincts, and we have 1,657 precincts. The votes are counted in the room where they are cast. The votes are recorded in the room where they are cast, and they are called in, or the app is used to send to us so we can share it with media and all over the world in the room where the votes are cast. And each candidate can have a representative watch the voting. And so if you're sitting in the Iowa caucus 1 week from tonight and you vote right away for the presidential preference, and then you're doing party business, which is also part of the caucuses, you can actually see on our website that we're reporting out to the rest of the world, you can see the results of what was just called in front of you. So I would say and let me add another layer to all of that. All of those results are kept in paper copy, and those paper copies are delivered to the party, and they are audited within 48 hours.
Got it.
So it is. There's really no way to game the system. People can have a tremendous amount of confidence, and even with the Democrats in 2020, it was an app problem.
Right. That's true.
Not necessarily the process problem.
That's true. And I will give the Iowa Democrats a shout out because we had Laura Bellin on here. She's the progressive voice, one of the progressive journals, Bleeding Heartland. And she was like, the Iowa Democrats were fine. And then the National Democrat Committee got involved. And that's when things kind of got a lot of pressure on the Iowa Democrats. So from my knowledge, I don't have insider knowledge, Jeff, but from my knowledge, it wasn't really an Iowa Democrat thing. It was more of a national thing where they got their fingers involved.
Well, I mean, I would be even stronger than that. I think the DNC thrust an app upon them before they had time to train. And to be real honest with you, now seeing what the DNC did to them, and I'm not a conspiracy kind of guy. I think Oswald acted alone. But honestly, I really think they were set up in some ways.
Yeah, interesting. I know that your comms guy, Kush, is in here, and he's thinking, don't say the word conspiracy. Comms people always love it when the word conspiracy comes out to play. I appreciate that. It's almost like the solution isn't getting newer technology or cybersecurity technology, or a few that are monitoring the process. The solution for the Iowa GOP is let's get as many eyeballs as possible focused on each race. That way, if something's fishy, all it takes is a few people to say, hey, we saw something suspicious at this one precinct. This is BS. And then the whole system is raised into question.
Yeah, and we have ways in our war room. We are going to have people that can answer the phones, talk to them directly, monitoring the app. I mean, we have built in so much repetition and so many checks, and we feel very, very satisfied with where we're at right now. We've got over 200 face-to-face trainings out there in all 99 counties. We're very quickly approaching a situation where I don't know that we could do much more in order to prepare.
Provided there's not some super tight neck and neck race, provided that doesn't happen, will we be looking at an announcement that evening after caucuses, maybe morning at the very latest?
Sure. Yeah. And really the announcement is anticlimactic because I see nothing that the rest of the world doesn't see. So, when I go out on the stage, it's sometimes not to make an announcement because it's already obvious. It's basically to
rubber stamp it.
Yeah, stamp, and also to be honest, just let everybody know that this worked very, very well. Thank all of the candidates, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because the ultimate people that make the call, unless it's an extremely tight race, are essentially the people that are watching the results come in. We've set it up like that, so it kind of takes the drama away from me.
Sure. That's interesting. So Freedom Caucus has been a very loud voice, and we're almost seeing, I don't want to call it division, just two different parties of thought. We kind of see the MAGA party of thought. We kind of see the Freedom Caucus party of thought. And maybe in some ways we see like the tried and true just GOP party thought. You may disagree with the way I'm framing that, which is fine, but does this actually pose, obviously it's no joke to say Trump's leading right now,
right.
But does the Freedom Caucus, they're backing DeSantis, I believe. Does this actually pose a challenge to Trump, do you think, or are you not really seeing the ground game there?
I'll be honest. I think the various divisions and the various areas of our party, and you could also throw in the Christian evangelical wing, the liberty wing, et cetera.
Wow.
I mean, at this point, the specter of another 4 years of Joe Biden is so much a part of us. I mean, it's the 700-pound gorilla in the room, and that nobody, well, a lot of people are talking about, but it's what's driving people to the polls. I really think the divisions that you see right now and the dividing up in terms of who you're going to caucus for, I think it's a matter of this night on January 15th, I'm going to vote for DeSantis, but I will accept Nikki Haley. We have very, very few, and some of that's just off the cuff. I've got a year of my life in this candidate. They can't really comprehend supporting anyone else. I hear very, very few, never Trump, never DeSantis, never Haley, that I truly believe are going to be like that in the general election. So I feel pretty comfortable. It's bruising. It always is. If Trump is the president again, the Freedom Caucus is going to need him. He's going to need them.
Yeah, that's
if
true.
Governor DeSantis is the nominee, he's going to need MAGA in a lot of these states. So the process of a general election is going to take care of itself in terms of what these candidates need and what our voters want, which ultimately, even more important than who the Republican president is, the fact that it is a Republican president.
Yeah, and we're Iowans, so we see this every year, which is, I'll never vote for that person in a million years. I would rather be tossed to the bottom of the Mariana Trench than vote. And then as soon as that person wins, they're like, I mean, they're not so bad. Like the party, it does seem, the Democrats do this too, but the Republican Party, at the end of the day, you're saying, no matter who wins or loses, even if we have a surprise turnaround, the GOP, the Iowa GOP at least, will remain unified.
Yes. And remember in 2016, we had a lot of people immediately after that were saying, absolutely not Trump. Remember
it was the Never Trumpers.
Absolutely. Well, remember Ted Cruz stood up at the RNC and did the ultimate, in my opinion, of political stupidity and gave a speech against the nominee. Now and look what happened. They kissed and made up.
Yeah.
So ultimately, what binds us together will win. But for some people, it takes a little bit longer to get there.
Yeah, 100%. Do you think the national GOP? Because, I mean, the Freedom Caucus, they ousted Kevin McCarthy. They're the ones who were responsible for him not getting there. And I don't know how many votes it was, 20 or something like that, to get Kevin McCarthy in. Then they kicked him right out. Do they pose a national thing? Do they try to peel off the national GOP and say, hey, Iowa GOP, that's fine that you're all unified. That's adorable. We're not with you. Do we see that kind of dispute, or do you think that also goes away?
I don't think so, because remember that, some of the legendary Freedom Caucus folks, Jim Jordan is, he was a part of that from the very beginning, and he endorsed Trump. I know, and I just heard Congressman Roy, who is crisscrossing the state for Ron DeSantis, but essentially when he was asked, okay, what happens, he had good things to say about the president, and I hear a lot of MAGA folks talk to me and say, Trump's our guy, but Ron DeSantis' record. I mean, we're highlighting the distinctions right now. That's what you do in a political campaign. I just don't see that. They're going to need each other.
Yeah, I agree.
And remember, with the ouster of Kevin McCarthy, that was a few people. I even questioned, to be honest with you, with some of those folks, if it was more about them than it was principle.
Interesting.
And it was very, very...
You're not the only one to say that either.
No, I mean, it was because here's why I say that. If your principles are to advance conservative legislation, the vehicle for doing that is not in front of the world and in front of the Democrats, giving them 2 weeks to make fun of us, which, if I'd have been a Democrat, I'd done the same thing. I just don't... I think the timing might have revealed some motivations beyond just principle. And the system for electing the speaker, that one person and then you can join up with the Democrats and 9 people can oust speaker, that was not a Republican pushback. That was a pushback of a few Republicans that decided they were going to vote for the Democrats that day for their own ends. So, and I just don't think so
there's a chance the Freedom Caucus is kind of in it for themselves, and maybe they're losing any traction.
I wouldn't say the Freedom Caucus. No, I have a great deal of respect. I'm talking about a couple people right at the top.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, no. The Freedom Caucus. Look, the Freedom Caucus says I know some of those individuals that were in that Freedom Caucus, and I got to tell you, I think there you are looking at principled people, and the majority of that Freedom Caucus, they will when they realize they've done everything they could possibly do, but they can advance by 3 steps instead of 5. The vast majority of that Freedom Caucus will do that because they are operating on principles. I'm talking about a very, very, very few people at the top.
At this point, is it kind of assumed that there's a Trump victory? Because the percentages, at this point, according to 538, all the runners up, DeSantis, Haley, everybody else combined, still are at 44%. Polling numbers change very quickly, as you know. This is Iowa. But is it considered a complete shock if DeSantis or Haley beat Trump, or is it anybody wins kind of a game? Well,
given the fact of where the polls have been the last, actually, since we've started polling the Iowa caucus, yes, it would be a shock. But there's a difference between shock and possibility.
Right.
Is it in the realm of possibility? Possibly, not to be redundant. But it's a daunting. It would be a daunting task. But as I've mentioned to several people in the Iowa caucuses, there are multiple tickets out of Iowa. So people are going to be looking at spread. The record for winning spread in a contested primary has been 12%. So you can reframe that saying, if Trump does win, does he get over 12%? What about second and third? And then the other thing I always mention, I was just saw Asa Hutchinson in a crowd. Ryan Binkley's been traveling everywhere. Do they have a chance to win? No. But if one of those candidates that are polling at 1-2%, and they end up getting 10%, they could claim a momentum victory too. So there's a lot of drama that night besides just who does win, which at this point, the polling is indicating who will. But boy, I've learned one thing in this game of caucus, because it's harder to poll caucus because it is an organizational feat as much as a popularity contest. I would never say never.
So conservatives often are talking this Freedom Caucus book, which is conservative values, don't overspend, but not necessarily in the White House, because Trump outspent Obama, I think, or at least it was close. I'm blanking on the numbers a little bit. Of course, Biden is also going to outspend. And so you have both parties kind of unified, sadly, on just spend more. is it time, and I don't even know if the GOP, I don't know if the Democrats care, but is it time for at least the GOP, who claims to be conservative on the money situation, the budget situation, is it about time for the GOP to unify and say, we've got to stop the crazy spending? But they say that, but the White House, the Republicans didn't necessarily do that. So are we going to see a GOP that says, no, the spending has got to end?
Yeah, I mean, I think that therein lies the value of a year-long caucus process, because all of these individuals, whether their candidate wins or not, is able to whisper in the ears of who we hope, or at least I hope, to be the next commander-in-chief. And if there's one thing that we're hearing, it is about the spending. And so, yes, this is an opportunity to have those voices heard. I would say this much about the spending, and that is when you have a Senate where it takes 60 votes to pass anything, which means it's not a matter of just who's in control. Does the governing party have 60 votes? We haven't had that since the first 2 years of Obama. So if you want to do something, and this is the age-old, this is a tough problem. This is almost like something that Aristotle would take on. And that is, I mean, do you hold on principle and say, I absolutely will not vote for this budget because it puts us in debt? Or do you say, we do not have 60 Republicans in the Senate, therefore we cannot push a budget or a balanced budget. Do you take what you can get? That's the real dilemma that you have. And, if I would say the ultimate test of the Republican Party, the ultimate test would be if we had control of the House, 60 votes in the Senate, and a Republican president. Then I would hope that every single Republican, the Freedom Caucus would be leading the way. In fact, I see that as the inherent value of the Freedom Caucus, holding us to fiscal responsibility. That's when we should be held accountable to the maximum degree.
And that's clearly stated. So what you're saying is, if the Republicans get their wish, if they get the executive, legislative branch, if they get Congress, and they still are passing these crazy big budgets, then you, Jeff Kaufmann, are saying, hey guys, that's a penalty.
And 60, it would have to be, and I'm not trying to parse words or
no, that's fine.
But if 60 votes in the Senate,
yeah,
absolutely, there would be no excuse not to bring the deficit spending under control. There really wouldn't be. And I think you'd see the Freedom Caucus there not compromising.
Yeah. So Gallup has numbers, I think this was maybe mid-November, on Americans' views are actually starting to change on Ukraine. So I believe it's 41% now. And these numbers, obviously a lot happens in a month and a half, but 41% think we're actually helping too much. And so despite that, now we have this apparent agreement on avoiding the debt ceiling. And of course, over half of our budget is now military spending. So does the GOP think we're spending too much on military? Maybe not enough on military? Do we support Ukraine? Do we not support you? That's a tough issue. How are you seeing candidates tackle that, and what messages seem to be resonating?
Sure. And then, we have a whole host of issues where reasonable Republicans following the Republican platform can disagree. Ukraine is a perfect example of that. Military spending is a perfect example of that. Sometimes the disagreement is within the minutia, although important minutia and details of a bill. Sometimes it's the overall policy. Do we support Ukraine or do we not? And I think you see what our candidates are doing, and I think our voters appreciate it. You see Vivek saying no. We see Nikki Haley say yes. And the thing about Iowa voters, we don't tend to be all or nothing. So, for example, if you remember in 2016, Ted Cruz came out essentially against ethanol. In fact, to be honest with you, in Washington, D.C., ethanol doesn't have really a bigger enemy than Ted Cruz. But yet he won the Iowa caucus because people saw 90% agreement on other issues. He also had a great organizational game. So I think it's a smart strategy for Nikki Haley to come out and say, I am in favor of this, or Vivek to say, I am not, knowing that probably your Iowa success or lack of success isn't going to be characterized by just one issue position. That's why I'm so proud of our Iowa voters. That's why I think we do caucuses well, because normally we're not all or nothing, and our voters are not demanding 100% agreement.
Interesting. Yeah. No, that's interesting. It seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but Vivek has a tendency to really dig in deeply the nuance. And he committed to this show 4 times and has yet to show up. So maybe we get him in here one day. The timeline's kind of tight, but I am curious if, you have Governor DeSantis, you have Nikki Haley, you have President Trump, who are all very focused on their messaging. Obviously, they have different styles, which we're not going to go into. But Vivek really, really digs, whether you agree with him or not, he really digs into nuance. He really tackles tough questions, and he has that discussion with people. But it's not really helping from a polling standpoint. Maybe he kind of did this shock and awe in that first debate and got his polling numbers up. But it seems like the more in the discussion he gets, the more he wades into nuance and has that logical discussion with people, or at least attempts to, the worse his polling numbers go. So do voters just want you to be super simple with your issues and stick to a thing? Or do they want you to actually have a discussion and get into the nuance? Because the polling numbers suggest the Vivek strategy doesn't work.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there.
It's a lot, yeah.
First of all, with Vivek, I mean, he's in his 30s. This is his first foray into politics.
Good point. Yeah.
I mean, he has got literally 6 to 8 election cycles where he could legitimately, in terms of viability, and heck, if we go the Joe Biden route, he's got a lot more years than that. So he's laying the one thing, and I'm not saying Vivek's not playing to win.
Right.
But, I mean, if the polling is even remotely accurate, that's not going to happen in Iowa. So what is Vivek doing? I think he is taking advantage, and that's why I think he's still here. His organization is still strong. He knows that he is whispering in the ear, and he's getting his points across.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this is long ball for him. So I'm guessing that he's probably thinking at some point, 28, 32, et cetera. In answer to your specific question about, do people want specifics? I think it depends on the venue. I think if you try to pack too much into a commercial, nobody listens to the commercial.
Sure, yeah.
I do think that when I've seen him in his events, and I've sat down with him twice now and interviewed him, to some degree of specificity. And of course, I chose the questions that I thought were that were on people's minds. Always pick the border and economics, et cetera. And people tend to like that. You can tell a crowd is actually listening. Sometimes I think you have to nuance when you give detail and when you don't. And and I think commercials and 20-second spots and a meet and greet where you only got 20 minutes and that's it. I think probably there you hit on your general principles. He's got the 10 truth elements. And in terms of when you decide to dig deep, I think he's exploring an issue. He's explored issues of the role of the RNC. He's explored issues of the pipeline, et cetera. Those are both issues on which reasonable Republicans can disagree. And so I think he's testing things too.
Yeah.
But just because his polling numbers are not going up does not mean that he isn't contributing to the overall discussion at the most important time, and that's right at the beginning. So I think if Vivek ends up not getting the nomination and steps out, he will have helped this process. And the same with everybody else. That's what's the beauty of the caucuses is we actually get to impact all these individuals first.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. Iowans are very, very good, and it seems like Republicans and Democrats both agree on this, but Iowans are very, very good at shaping the national conversation, and this is our opportunity to do it. And I generally think there is a idea out there that dumb Iowans, dumb farming Iowans, what do they know? And then Iowans every caucus time come out with these very nuanced, incredible questions, and the national media is kind of like, whoa, what now?
Yep.
What? And so it's always funny when I travel anywhere and people are like, wait a minute, you guys just talk about politics in Iowa? I was like, yeah, pretty much. If someone you disagree with in a coffee shop, you might strike up a conversation and talk to them about it. It's like shocking to most people, the ability Iowans have to really cut through the minutia and ask those really difficult questions.
Absolutely.
Real quick comment. Is the common consensus, at least in the non-Vivek party, that he's basically running for a Trump cabinet position? Because I'm even hearing him run ads now that are saying, like, what has been done to Trump is wrong. And I'm like, dude, what are you running for president or are you running for a cabinet position?
Sure. And in terms of Trump being taken off the ballot, remember DeSantis and Haley also made very strong statements that was wrong. I'm not going to look into Vivek's heart. I will say this much. He is, by anybody's anybody's standard, a very outside the box successful entrepreneur. I really think, sure, maybe he is looking to get more involved in politics, but maybe he's been very, very successful. I think with his passion, having sat, this close to him and interviewed him, I think there's an element that I've made it. The American dream for me has come true. I'm going to try to make an impact. And as of anything, it's probably a mixture of both. I think he's been a good addition to the party. I'll be honest. I wish Chris Christie would have been here. The only criticism,
that's weird, isn't it? Yeah. Why on earth did he avoid Iowa?
Well,
as much as he did?
It's
so weird.
Every candidate that's done that, and I'll be honest, he's the only candidate that I have had anything negative to say, not because of what he stands for, but because he blew off Iowa clearly and almost arrogantly. I kind of resent that, to be honest.
A lot of people do, and it's showing he needs to drop out. There's absolutely no path for him. Just looking at the data only, I have no personal opinions against Chris Christie, against or for, but it's kind of, it is interesting. I don't know if there's any record of any person who's avoided the Iowa caucuses and won, or at least placed in the top 3.
I think you're right.
I don't know if that's happened.
Right. It's a big mistake.
So I know one of your passions is keeping Iowa first. Of course, this goes back to last cycle. The Dems are now gone. This year, we're probably not going to see that impact as much because it's, they're keeping Joe Biden on the ticket, apparently. At least that's what they've indicated. But what's the plan now? Because this kind of signals that, maybe the national GOP party is kind of thinking, maybe Iowa's run its course. So what is involved from your perspective on at least keeping Iowa caucuses alive? Yeah,
I hear nothing but positive from the RNC. I don't think we have an issue there. If we have a Republican president elected, I don't think we have an issue. So I feel good with where we're at in terms of my backyard. I talked to Ronna McDaniel every other day, either by text or chief of staff. She's very pleased with what we're doing out here. The RNC, we're going to have a group of multiple RNC officials here this weekend. We're going to actually take them to caucuses. So my head's in 2028 as much as 2024. So I feel good about all of that. The Democrats will have a shot of getting back in. They needed to push back. The Iowa Democrats, if the RNC or President Trump, if he'd have been president, did to me what Biden and the DNC did to the Iowa Democrats, I'm not trying to be sensational. I say this, I'd have been after them like a rabid dog. It seems to me that the Iowa Democrats should have fought harder, and they need to understand, this isn't necessarily a criticism of their motives, they cannot have a mail-in caucus because that makes it a primary and that makes us an infraction of New Hampshire. So what comes with us being first in the nation, we got to give up something. And what that is the mail-in. If you don't like it, then okay, I guess I'll have to respect that. But boy, oh boy, is that hard on our state.
That's a good point. I think that people miss that. It's not just a matter of the mail-in thing. It's a matter of that changes the whole process. Caucuses are where you have the open discussion, the open debate, the transparency. You debate each other, and then you vote, right? But primaries are different. So it's not a matter of which one is right or which one is wrong.
Absolutely.
It's a matter of if you make that change, now you're in conflict with New Hampshire, and that obviously doesn't work either. Because New Hampshire and Iowa both have laws that prop up the First in the Nation caucus and First in the Nation primary.
That's right. And therein lies the issue.
There's the rub.
That the Democrats are going to have to pick First in the Nation or mail-in. Literally for 2028, that's their decision.
It sounds like you think, based on those words, please, Jeff, push back if I'm wrong. It sounds like you think there's hope it comes back.
I think so.
And there may be a little bit of a clue that Democrats are still testing the waters because Vice President Harris has been here two times, I think. Maybe more. I think it's 2 times. In 2023, which, obviously there are penalties that the Democrats have if you campaign in Iowa, but it kind of, just in my opinion, it kind of looks like campaigning. So you think there's a chance the Democrats come back?
If they play it right, and the Iowa, it starts now. Believe me, we're not first in the nation right now because it just happened. We're first in the nation because I started working on it in 2021. So and I wish them good luck on that.
Yeah, me too, because it's a huge driver for Iowa, and if we shape politics in both parties, we shape politics for the whole country. Iowa goes first. We don't necessarily pick the president, but we definitely changed the narrative, and we definitely aim this. There have been so many times, more than I can count, where the national spotlight was on a particular topic, and then one Iowan asks one question, and the entire spotlight of the campaign changes in 24 hours. Yep. And Iowans are very, very good at this. We have yet to see if South Carolina natives are good at this. I imagine they will be eventually, but Iowans are used to it.
Yep.
Have you seen decreased media interest this year, or it's still too early to tell? I still see Bloomberg setting up their headquarters downtown. I still see stuff.
We're still seeing it. I mean, I think we're still seeing very, very robust interest. I'm doing the same amount of interviews I did in 20 and 16.
Really? Okay.
Just walked out of a press gaggle, and actually there were more there than I don't think I remember any from 2020 that big. So yes, I'm seeing it. We're still going to have our media center. I think the eyes of the nation. Yeah, I think we're still good. I think it'd even be more if the Democrats were with us on this one.
Yeah,
and
sure.
But and let's face it, next year, in 4 years, we know that the Democrats are going to have a new candidate. If Joe Biden wins, he's term limited out. If he doesn't, he's not going to run at 86. And then on the Republican side, if Donald Trump wins, if he ends up being successful in the primary and wins, he's going to be, he's term limited out, or, at that point, he's going to be 82. So the chances are very overwhelming that in 2028, there's going to be a new candidates in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. What a wonderful time to reset everything.
It's going to be a wild one, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, we want to be first in the nation for that.
Well, yeah, and I want that too, especially because that's great for our podcast.
Absolutely.
But we had a Rita Hart in here, like I said, and this is the question I'll end on, about 3-4 months, something like that. And we asked her this question as well. So Arthur Brooks has incredible research, a really, really good dude. I've had him on another podcast, that 93% of the country hates how divided we are. And I asked Rita this, I'm going to ask you this, obviously you can't really, force anything nationally, but as the chair of the Iowa GOP, is it your responsibility to make sure that the dehumanizing attacks and personal attacks are ended?
I would say to be real honest, my primary responsibility as the chairman of the Republican Party is to win elections and to make sure that the winners of our primaries that we stay out of, the winners of our primaries, are successful in the general election. That's first and foremost. We're more of a procedural type of situation as opposed to a legislative. I would say this, though. There is less division, especially if you look, I'm looking over here at your beautiful view you have in the Capitol.
View of the Capitol. It's kind of nice.
And even though there are significant divisions there, and I realize I'm talking about state, but I think it's a microcosm, which is in Washington, D.C., still, over 90% of all votes in that Capitol are bipartisan one way or the other. So I do think that there is divisiveness, and certainly in primaries and caucuses, we create our own divisiveness. But I also think that it's more fun sometimes for journalists to write about the one issue they disagreed on as opposed to the 10 that they passed unanimously over there. So I also think there are some moments of bipartisan relationship. I text my former Democratic colleagues, I still got about 3 or 4 over there, regularly. And there's an element of trust where I'm sure neither of us would want our text to, they could be taken out of context. So I think there's more going on than not. I do believe, though, that in terms of the tone, more important for the candidates, especially, and that's another reason why Iowa's terrific, because we have more competitive legislative districts than gerrymandered jokes like Illinois, or I'll also hit the Republicans in Texas, where there are overwhelmingly things are set up Republican and Democrat.
I think one of the challenges that really makes me upset in this country is people often can't delineate between strong disagreements and criticism and dehumanization, and those are very, very different. And so I agree. I understand the clarification, right? Your number one thing is to win elections. Totally get it. But do you condemn any, and I'm not talking about anything specific, I really don't have anything up my sleeve, but do you condemn any efforts to dehumanize opposition from the Iowa GOP?
Well, just this morning I made the ending of my speech was I reminded everyone of the Republican Party and where the Republican Party came from. And we were a third party that was the only party that was bold enough to stand up against slavery, where there should not be any middle ground or any compromise. That was our roots. And so being bold and in that particular case, being bold and standing up for civil rights and civil liberties was exactly that was our birth. That was our genesis. So I think standing bold, but I think you can stand boldly and still recognize that the other side has legitimate viewpoints. I do it as a government professor. I am meticulously, strongly nonpartisan in the classroom. I mean, the kids don't even, unless they look at the internet, the kids don't even know whether I'm Republican or Democrat. So some of that lack of dehumanization starts in our educational systems, and we're certainly not seeing that in the Ivy League right now. So I think they need to also take the lead as opposed to the lawmakers that have to win elections.
Jeff Kaufmann, chair of the Iowa GOP. Of course, the caucuses are January 15th. I know you are extremely busy right now, so thank you for coming on the Iowa podcast. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, it was great. It was fun. I appreciate it.
And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa podcast.